Yes.
Well, here we go. Is that too loud?
You're good. I'll go back there.
All right, if it's, yeah,
I'll make sure, but I think it's
good. It's kind of weird to hear yourself on a mic. So I was just thinking that this is a story about a really ordinary guy, so somebody might find it kind of boring. But I can see all you guys, and if anybody falls asleep, I'm going to call you out by name. And there's a special, and some of you people are watching online. I can tell that too. So you don't want your names mentioned. So. And so my story is it's kind of my testimony. I wouldn't really call it a sermon, and I just wanted to say that I'm with Christian Motorcycle Association, but I'm not a certified preacher. So this is just my story about myself. I was telling Carson, I was thinking about titling this talk, Why I'm Not Carson Cole. And Carson has a really powerful testimony, and I think of my buddy Billy Dollick, come out of the 1%er world and turned his life over to Christ and has this really, well, it was a good enough story that he wrote a book about it. And I think of Ray and Margot. They had this really dramatic lifestyle. So compared to those guys, my life is kind of ordinary. So I was thinking that if you looked up ordinary Canadian working stiff on Google, my picture would come up. And maybe this can resonate with you if you're an ordinary person. My story is probably no less sinful. We're all sinners. We all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And sometimes we can do it in kind of a boring way, and then sometimes, like these other guys, they're very flamboyant, and but that's not me. But I'm thankful for these people with these flamboyant stories, because they get attention and they bring glory to God, and that's what I'm concerned about. We all have work to do for the kingdom. No matter what your struggles are, what your achievements are, what your interests are, or your passions, out in this world with 8 billion people, or however many it is, there's somebody there that has lived through similar things that you have. So there is some way you can connect with other people with your story. So it made me think of Colossians 12, verse 12 to 27. So I'm just going to read that. So it's saying here, starting at verse 12, for just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members are of one body, though there are many, are one body, so that it is with Christ. For in our spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews and Greeks and slaves or free, and we are all made to drink of one spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot would say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it less part of the body. If the ear would say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body, if the whole, I lost my spot here. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as He chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there is many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker and are indispensable, and those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor, and our less respectable members are treated with greater respect. Whereas our most respectable members do not need this, but God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior members, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. So that's kind of maybe what I'm getting at here. Got my 3x5 cards here. We're all different, but even ordinary stories can resonate with somebody. Here's my story. I was born as a very young baby, age 0, in Clinton, Ontario, and I was my mom's first baby, and I was able to hang on till Mother's Day. So I was born on Mother's Day, 1953. So I've been pretty special ever since. Well, I guess to my mom anyway. The first 50 years and 5 days of my life, I lived within about 100 kilometers of where I was born in southern Ontario. When I was about 7, my mom and dad bought a meat market grocery store in a little town called St. Mary's, which is near London. My dad was a butcher, so he that fit into his trade, and that kind of reminded me of a story. You know, when you're a kid, you think, wow, it'd be great if my dad was a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. But it's only recently that I've realized what an asset it is to have a dad as a butcher. I do carpentry work, and so if somebody says, wow, Jim, that's kind of rough, I can just say, well, what did you expect? My dad's a butcher.
I love you, brother.
I didn't do good at school. That may be obvious, but I repeated grade 4 and then grade 9. I have a brother that's 2 years younger than me, and a sister that's 3 years younger, and another sister that's about 5 years younger, and then I had a baby sister that was about 10 years younger. But 3 of them caught up to me in school. My parents were quite involved in a Pentecostal church plant. All the kids attended. It seemed kind of boring to me as a kid, but I really loved hanging out with the kids after church and fooling around. I remember when I was a little guy in Sunday school, my Sunday school teacher's name was Mrs. Brooks, And I remember praying to accept Jesus in that Sunday school, and so that was a formative thing, but easy to forget about. And I remember as a kid, my brother and I shared a bedroom, so I would always remind him to say his prayers. I'm not sure if he did or not, but I kept reminding him anyway. I had a pretty happy childhood. I lived in this little town of St. Mary's, and we just had lots of fun with our friends. And in the summertime, we would be playing down by the creek and the river, and we built rafts. And some days we were gone all day, and just had a lot of fun. Also during that time, I had a friend that lived on a farm, and I would sometimes go and visit him for a week in the summer, and he had a Honda 65, and so we would rip around all over the place on this Honda 65 long before we were 15. So that was probably the beginning of my love for motorcycles, and through that I kind of dreamed of having one of my own. My parents' store meant that we always had jobs, so we were working, so we got money, and I was able to save up enough money. I bought a 500cc single-cylinder matchless, and I brought it home and tried to get it started. And I guess I was only about 15, and I didn't really have a clue, but we kept working on it, and me and a buddy would take it out on these warm summer nights and try and push it up and down the street, and all we could ever get it to do was a backfire, and it would make this huge bang. So I eventually gave up on that. I got my license when I was about 16, and I bought a 250 Suzuki, which was a pretty sweet ride at that time, and so with that I rode all over the place. In July 20th, 1970, I went out to this little village that was not very far from my hometown, and they had a thing called a garden party, and it was like an outdoor variety show. They had people singing, and the old people really liked it, but the kids didn't really think it was that big of a deal. So lots of the kids, there was lots of kids around, and they weren't that interested in the show, but they were just interested in hanging out and getting together with other kids. And the kids, half the kids from that village went to my high school, and so there was a cute girl there that I had noticed from high school, and I was kind of surprised when she came up and asked me for a ride on my motorcycle. So we went for a ride and then went back and sat in the park and talked and talked, and then I guess she got bored of my talking, which you'll probably understand, but she leaned over and kissed me. She was not the first girl I'd kissed, even though I was only 17, but I guess that was the right kiss, because I was hooked on her for 30 years. 2 years later, she was graduating from high school, and she was going off to college, and I was just finishing up grade 11, even though she was a couple of years younger than me. And so I figured, well, if my girlfriend's going off to college, maybe it's my time to cut my losses and move on. So Brenda went off to college, not very far away, just in London, only about a half an hour away, and I got a job doing drywall work. I had done some drywall work during the summers before that, and Brenda had an apartment with some girls, and I lived at home for a while. Then I got a place with a buddy in London, and at that time, I had a 67 Triumph Bonneville, and I moved in with this buddy, and he had a 67 BSA Thunderbolt, so we were pretty cool. Brenda graduated and got a job, and she thought we should get married. I thought we should just move in together, but October 18th, 1974, we got married. We rented an apartment in St. Mary's. I think Brenda was kind of disappointed that I think she thought that maybe once we were married, I would turn into like something way better than what I was. That may be something that's happened quite a few times in other people's lives too. But where am I here?
Got an apartment.
Yeah, an apartment. Yeah. Time carried on. A couple of years later, I was at home by myself one day. I turned on the TV, and I don't know if some of you guys aren't old enough to remember, but back in the day, every little town had its own cable TV channel, and so they would have local people on doing bingo and anyway. But this particular day, there was a preacher on there, and he was using material from Campus Crusade to explain the way of salvation. It seemed so basic and simple without a whole bunch of extra stuff included. It was clearer than I had understood it before. I kneeled down at my couch in my living room and surrendered my life to Jesus. I didn't feel a lot of emotions, and so I guess Campus Crusade was saying, you know, there's the facts of Jesus, you know, who he is, what he did for us, and you can sometimes have feelings of emotional experience, or you can't. It doesn't change the fact that you've trusted Christ. But I remember I just felt a really strong sense of peace. I told Brenda about it shortly after that, and I think she thought I had flipped out. She was kind of worried that I might be signing up to go to the mission field in Africa or something. The preacher actually that was on the TV actually lived in the apartment above me. And he really slammed the lid down on the toilet loud. But I met him in the hall one day and told him what had happened. We started getting together and became friends, and I started attending his church. Brenda would join me sometimes, and we got to know some people there. A couple of years later, we had a little baby girl, Maggie, who was here with me a few weeks ago. When she was old enough, I would take her with me to Sunday school, and Brenda was not antagonistic, but was really not that interested, but she really liked that I would take Maggie away on Sunday mornings so that she could have some time to herself and read some books, so she quite enjoyed that. I continued to pray for Brenda's salvation, and we got along pretty well. In 1982, Brenda's mom broke her arm and found out that it was cancer. She passed away shortly after that. She wasn't really very old, early 60s. Brenda took it pretty hard. And only about a year later, we found out that my mom had cancer. And in November 9th, 1983, my mom passed away. I think that was what was the tipping point for Brenda, and she decided to put her faith in Jesus as everything around her was crashing down. When my daughter was about 3, she started telling people that she was going to have a baby brother. And not sure where she got that idea from, but sometime later, Brenda picked up on the idea. I was not keen because Brenda was a juvenile diabetic, and she had had some problems with having Maggie. It seemed too dangerous to me, but she talked me into it. She was pretty persuasive. So November 11th, 1983, at my mom's funeral, Brenda told my sister that she was pregnant. June 15th, 1984, Simon was born. Life went on. About 10 years later, Brenda decided that she would like to be baptized. And that was a really big deal for her. I grew up in town and went to the swimming pool, and we had this great big swimming area so just about everybody from St. Mary's knows how to swim, because when you're a kid, you go where the kids hang out, and that was this quarry, and it was about 80 feet deep, so you either had to swim or you had to stay home. So she didn't even like to get her face wet. So putting her head under the water was a really, really big deal. And Maggie decided she would get baptized with her mom. So we invited friends and family to the baptism, and time went on, and Brenda and I were leading Bible studies in our home. In 2001, I heard of this evangelistic video series, Alpha. It sounded great, so I started talking about it, and a Christian couple from our church offered to help. They wanted to bring a friend along with them. We invited a bunch of people and did the Alpha in our living room and served supper, and had discussions after watching the video series. And the gospel was preached. That fall, Brenda started to get hiccups, literally. We finished up Alpha in November, and December 31st, we went to see the surgeon. He told Brenda that she had cancer of the esophagus, and said that she had a 10% chance of making it to 5 years if we did everything she said. So we did. But May 3rd, 4 months later, May 3rd, 2002, she died. She was 46. I was stunned, but took comfort in the fact that she had trusted Jesus. I tried to make a home for my kids, but I just couldn't do it. Anytime we spent time together, it was like we just made each other sad. I continued to attend the church that we had attended for about 17 years. And that was where Brenda's funeral had been. And when, on Sunday mornings when the worship music would start, I could not seem to quit sobbing uncontrollably. So I decided that I needed to go someplace else on Sunday mornings. I asked the leadership if I could have the mic for a few minutes after the main service. They agreed. I told the congregation that I needed to go someplace else on Sunday mornings. I was not mad or disappointed with the church. Also, I thanked them all for praying for Brenda. I said that I knew that some of them had prayed harder for Brenda than maybe they had ever prayed before. And the elders prayed, and I prayed, but we didn't get what we wanted. even though it did not work out, even though it did not work out the way I wanted, it was not going to quit. I was not going to quit praying, and I wanted them to decide to not give up on praying as well. And I thanked them for all their prayers, and the next week I went to a different church. The fall after Brenda died, I got the idea that to have an alpha in the little village where my kids had grown up and we had been involved in lots of stuff. I had been on the volunteer fire department for about 7 or 8 years when we lived there, and then we moved away, so you can't be on the volunteer fire department if you move out of the area. So that was the end of that. But I had a lot of good times and made a lot of good friends. So I thought, well, I'd sure like to share the gospel with these guys. And so I made up these little flyers, and I went around and stuck them in mailboxes, and some of the guys lived out in the country, so they had the country mailboxes, so my daughter decided to help, so every Wednesday night we packed up our TV and our VHS player and drove to a little village called Granton. I had rented a little Lions Club hall in the park, and we served meals, and but sometimes it was just pizza. We watched the videos and discussed it afterwards. We had 6 or 7 people come out pretty regular, and the gospel was shared. I was in the spring of 2003, almost a year after Brenda died. I was still pretty stunned from losing Brenda. The job that I had, the ownership had changed hands, and it wasn't the same job anymore, so it didn't really work out. So I offered my house up for sale. My daughter was living in her own place, and my son, who was about to turn 18 that spring, planned to go to local college in the fall. I asked him if it would be okay if I went someplace else to start a new life. That didn't bother him at all. A guy that I had done work for bought my house, and I bought a 1981 750 Honda for $1,500. So on May 15th, 2003, when I was 50 years and 5 days old, I headed out from my home turf, and I figured that I was not coming back. I think I was looking for comfort by visiting friends along the way. My first stop was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and and on the Sunday I went with my friend to her church, and the church that she was attending. It was in the end of May, and it was a little Episcopalian church, which is what Americans call Anglican. And they had a guest speaker there, and he talked about John. He talked about John the Baptist. You don't hear many people give sermons about John the Baptist. John was in prison, and he asked his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you the one, or should we expect somebody else?" So I'm just going to read you that passage. How's my time?
Doing good.
Yeah? I'm probably 2/3 of the way through. Yes, so Matthew 11, chapter 11, verse 2. When John heard in prison that what the Messiah was doing, he sent word to his disciples. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news brought to them, and blessed," and then he says kind of like this pronouncement, but he says, and this is, I think he's saying this is for you, John. "Blessed is anyone who does not take offense to me." And so what this preacher said was, well, maybe that means blessed. If you want to be blessed, you may have things not work out the way you want. Because I don't think John wanted to end up with his head on a platter and be in prison. He thought he was going to make way for the king. And I'm not sure he completely understood that, but man, he was doing his part. So I felt like that, like the message was for me. Even though things were not working out the way I planned, I was going to hang in there, even though I was pretty brokenhearted. Yeah, if you want to be blessed, don't fall away because of how Jesus is going to do things. I did not feel blessed, but I was not going to fall away. I never really felt like saying, "Why me?" Because I thought, well, why not me? I'm no different than anybody else. This happens to people all the time. So I left Pittsburgh, I traveled to North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Tampa, Florida, and then on to Austin, Texas. And I stayed with my friends a few days at each place. And even though I thought the trip was supposed to be for me to find comfort and encouragement in my friends, it seemed like they needed me to comfort them. And everybody's got hurts and disappointments, and I think the fact that they saw that I was carrying on in spite of my loss was an encouragement to them that they could carry on as well. I don't think I realized it at the time, but that motorcycle trip was pretty good therapy for me. I was in some ways all by myself, and after I left Austin, I was heading for California, but in the middle of New Mexico, I realized that I was getting too hot. It was in June, and I didn't realize that it could get too hot to ride a motorcycle because I'd never been in the South before. So I headed north through New Mexico up into Colorado, and as soon as I got into the mountains, it became cool enough to ride into Wyoming. And I don't know how many of you guys have been in Wyoming, but there's no people live there. So when you're, and I was kind of taking not back roads, not unpaved roads, but back roads. So some places there was hundreds of kilometers where there wasn't really any anything except cows and grass. And so when you're on a motorcycle all by yourself in the middle of Wyoming, you're really all by yourself. Up through Montana and into Alberta, where 3 of my siblings had lived for most of their adult lives. I was telling people that I knew that I was looking for a new bride, which is not a bad idea, because they come pre-qualified. When I first became single, I read a book about dating that had a few pointers that I remember. I had not been dating a dating person for a long time because Brenda and I had been a couple for 30 years. In this book, it said to be realistic about your options. Grade yourself, and if you are grade 3, you might be disappointed if you're shooting for a 10. So I started rating myself, and on this point and that, and I realized that I was pretty weak in the education department. I thought to myself, I don't really have a good education, but I think I'm pretty smart. But then it hit me like a ton of bricks. It is possible, Jim, that you're just dumb enough to think you're smart. So I then threw the book away. So I visited my brother in Calgary and then to Edmonton, where my matchmaking sisters had arranged a meet-up barbecue with Karen Ennis. I knew this was a setup, but for some reason, Karen didn't seem to realize what was going on. I was smooth as silk and moved right in and asked her if we could go for a coffee after the barbecue. I could give her a ride home to Fort Saskatchewan, and we would go for a coffee. I went on to ride up to Hay River, Northwest Territories, on that old 750 Honda, and spent the fall working for my sister. Karen and I talked on the phone and emailed. At Christmas, I came down to stay with my brother in Calgary, and Karen and I visited back and forth. In February of 2004, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. We got married March 20th, 2004, and we attended a local Alliance church where Karen had been attending and where we got married. I heard about CMA from, I don't even know where I heard about it, but I went and knocked on this guy's door one night, and I said, I heard you're part of CMA, and he said, well, no, I used to be, but here's a phone number, and he gave me Jim Pennington's phone number. So I called Jim up, and he said, well, we're going to have a chapter meeting on Tuesday night or whatever. So at Sturgeon Alliance in Gibbons, which was not that far from Fort Saskatchewan. So one cold, rainy night, I attended my first meeting in a portable at Sturgeon Alliance, and Ray and Jim were the only ones there. But I decided to go back anyway. Karen and I have had many adventures since we've been involved with CMA, and it's been a real blessing to me. Kind of a platform to share the gospel with people. When people come up and talk to you, it's kind of like they're kind of pre-qualified. If they can't figure out what the patch means, it's, you know, they probably can't figure anything out, so one of the things, we've done lots of things with CMA, and one of the stories that I think is kind of funny is one year we rode to Sturgis, and you guys know what Sturgis is, a big wild party. But one of the things, the South Dakota CMA state group set up volunteer situations, and at one time CMA actually got money, got a donation from the Jack Pine Gypsies that run Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. But so we would help out with different things. We did a thing where we stood at the bottom of that. I think it's an old airplane set of stairs, and people pay $5 to go up, and they can take a picture of the main street, and everybody wants to get that. So our job was just to make sure that there didn't get to be too many people, but people were lined up, so we got to stand there and talk to them. But one of the things we signed up for, and this is kind of not what you'd expect from going to Sturgis, was one of the guys was going to be preaching a sermon at the local nursing home. So Karen and I went along, and guy gave a pretty good gospel message, and he said, well, if anybody wants to accept Christ, just put your hand up. And a whole bunch of these old people put their hand up, and so we got to pray with a couple of little old ladies, and we shared that little Steps to Peace with God, the little Billy Graham booklet, and so we went through it and we prayed with the ladies, and at the end of the book, it's got the place where you sign it. And I said to the ladies, now make sure you sign in here. Let's just sign it right now. We'll put a date on it. And if you're ever scared or you think you haven't trusted Jesus, just get that little book out, and you can see right there. There's your name. There's the date. I trusted Jesus, and you're saved. So. All of this to say, even if you don't have a spectacular life story, you can click with somebody. And I guess what resonated with me, was how simple the Campus Crusade material was. And so when I'm 72, when I was 69, I got this tattoo, and it's the only tattoo I've gotten so far, and probably my only tattoo. But what I like, it's a gospel presentation. And so the question is, if you were to die tonight, are you sure you're going to go to heaven? The H is for heaven, and the Bible says that you can be sure. So the next finger is M for man. Man as a sinner cannot save himself. The big finger is G for God. God is faithful, but he can't let sin go unpunished. He couldn't really be God if he was somehow tainted by sin. So his solution was Jesus, the God-man, who died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sins, and purchased a place for us in heaven. And F is faith. True saving faith is trusting in Jesus Christ alone. And that's trusting and not just understanding that he was the God-man, but saying, Jesus, I'm putting my full weight down on you. I'm putting my life, I'm putting my entire life hopes on you. So, and that's what it means to trust Christ. So I think everybody here is probably a believer, but if there's anybody here that wants to talk to me about that afterwards, I'd love to talk to you. And it's really important to, if you have trusted Jesus, to tell somebody. But anyway, thank you very much. Good talking to you.